How many times have you built a perfect streak, felt your power rising like the sun over the horizon, your energy concentrating like lightning gathering in storm clouds? You will becoming unbreakable like steel forged in the fires of discipline, only to watch it all crumble in a single night. How many times have you stood strong for weeks, months even, feeling like a god among mortals, moving through the world with the quiet confidence of a man who has tasted true power, only to wake up the next morning with the bitter taste of defeat in your mouth and the familiar hollow ache in your chest that tells you everything you built has been destroyed? You tell yourself it was weakness. You blame your lack of discipline. You curse your failing willpower like a man cursing the darkness while refusing to light a candle. But the truth is darker, more insidious than simple weakness. The truth is that you were poisoned, deliberately, systematically, by a substance that masquerades as social lubricant, as liquid courage, as harmless relaxation, as the key to masculine bonding and sophisticated living. Alcohol is the destroyer of retention, the assassin of willpower, the poison that dissolves resolve like acid dissolves steel, slowly but inevitably, until what once seemed unbreakable becomes nothing more than rust and memory. Every drop that passes your lips is a betrayal of the man you're becoming. Every sip is a step backward on the path to greatness, a vote against your future self, a small act of self-sabotage disguised as celebration or relaxation. Every drink is a vote for the weak version of yourself, the version that settles for less, that gives up when things get difficult, that trades long-term power for short-term pleasure like Esau trading his birthright for a bowl of porridge. They don't want you to know this. The alcohol industry, worth over $1 trillion globally, an empire built on the bones of broken men and shattered dreams, needs you confused about what their product really does to you. They need you to believe that drinking makes you more masculine, more confident, more attractive, more socially adept. They sell you images of strong men holding bottles, of successful people toasting with champagne, of alpha males commanding respect with whiskey in their hands like scepters of power. But these are lies wrapped in marketing, deception dressed as aspiration, poison packaged as medicine. The truth is that alcohol is the enemy of everything you're trying to build through retention. It attacks your nervous system like a virus attacks healthy cells. It disrupts your hormones like a saboteur disrupts a carefully constructed plan. It weakens your willpower like water weakens the foundation of a building. And it creates the perfect conditions for relapse, the ideal environment for your carefully built discipline to crumble into dust. And they know it. They've always known it. They've studied the effects, measured the outcomes, calculated the profits with the cold precision of actuaries calculating life insurance premiums. They understand that their product creates dependency not just chemical, but psychological, social, and spiritual. They know that every bottle sold makes the next bottle easier to sell. They know that every drink consumed makes sobriety seem more difficult, more antisocial, more extreme. Look at the great men of history who understood retention, who built empires through disciplined energy, who channeled their life force into world-changing achievements. Napoleon didn't drink before battle, understanding that his mind was his greatest weapon and alcohol was the enemy of mental clarity. He knew that victory belonged to the general whose faculties remained sharp while his enemies grew dull. Alexander the Great abstained not just from sexual release, but from alcohol during his campaigns, knowing that conquest required complete control over his faculties. He understood that the same discipline that allowed him to retain his seed was necessary to retain his edge in battle. His enemies often celebrated with wine while he remained sober, planning his next move with the clarity that comes only to the undrugged mind. The Spartan warriors, those legends of discipline and strength who became immortal through their dedication to excellence, viewed drunkenness as weakness unbefitting a man. They understood that the same discipline required to maintain their physical conditioning was necessary to maintain their mental conditioning. They saw alcohol as a luxury for soft men, a crutch for those who couldn't face reality with clear eyes and steady hands. At Thermopylae, when 300 Spartans held off the Persian army, they did so with clear minds and steady hands. While their enemies may have dulled their fear with wine, the Spartans faced death with the crystal clarity that comes only to men who have learned to master every aspect of their being. The ancient Chinese emperors who practiced Jing conservation understood that alcohol scattered the very essence they were trying to preserve. They called it devil's water because they observed how it transformed disciplined men into undisciplined boys, how it turned focused energy into scattered chaos, how it converted accumulated power into dissipated weakness. The Taoist masters taught that alcohol was a thief in the night, stealing away the very essence that men spent lifetimes trying to cultivate. They understood that what took months to build could be destroyed in hours, that what required iron discipline to create could be undone by liquid weakness. The Indian sages who taught about ojas, the vital essence that could be transformed into spiritual power, knew that spirits of the bottle destroyed the spirits of the man. They called alcohol madhu, meaning honey, but they understood it was honey that turned to poison in the vessel of an undisciplined man, sweetness that became bitterness, pleasure that became pain. In the Vedic traditions, alcohol was seen as one of the great obstacles to spiritual development, a substance that pulled consciousness downward when the goal was to lift it upward. The rishis understood that intoxication of any kind was incompatible with the clarity necessary for self-realization. Tesla, the genius who channeled his sexual energy into revolutionary inventions that literally changed the world, was known to avoid alcohol almost entirely. He understood that his mind was his greatest asset, more valuable than any material possession, and alcohol was the enemy of mental clarity, the destroyer of the very faculties that made his genius possible. While other men drowned their potential in bottles, he was literally lighting up the world with the power of his retained essence. His laboratory became a temple where sexual energy was transmuted into electrical energy, where the fire of retention was converted into the light that would illuminate civilization. Compare that wisdom to now. Men gather in bars like moths gathering around flames that will burn their wings, drowning their sorrows and their potential in equal measure. They drink to celebrate, to commiserate, to socialize, to relax, to forget, to remember, to feel confident, to feel numb. They've been taught that alcohol is the solution to every emotional state, the answer to every social situation, the key to unlocking their confidence and charm. They've been programmed to believe that real men drink beer, that sophisticated people appreciate wine, that successful individuals toast with champagne. They've learned that refusing a drink is antisocial, that sobriety is suspicious, that choosing clarity over intoxication marks you as different, extreme, judgmental. But watch what happens when retention meets alcohol. Watch how quickly the strongest streak can crumble under the influence of this liquid kryptonite. The man who stood firm for months, who felt his power building like pressure in a steam engine, who experienced his energy concentrating like sunlight through a magnifying glass, becomes weak as a child after a few drinks. His inhibitions dissolve like sugar in water. His judgment clouds like a clear sky filling with storm clouds. His carefully built discipline crumbles like a sandcastle before a wave, like a house of cards in a hurricane, like everything he thought was solid revealing itself to be nothing more than illusion. The neural pathways he strengthened through weeks of saying no become overridden by the chemical chaos flooding his brain like a river overflowing its banks. The willpower he's forged in the fires of resistance melts like ice under summer sun, like steel returning to its liquid state when exposed to temperatures it cannot withstand. And in that moment of weakness, when his defenses are down and his guard is dropped, when the fortress of his discipline has been breached by the Trojan horse of intoxication, the urges return with vengeance. Not the manageable urges of a clear mind, the kind he's learned to observe and dismiss, but the overwhelming compulsions of a brain under chemical siege. The retention he's built so carefully, the energy he's accumulated so patiently, the power he's concentrated so deliberately, spills out into the void of a moment's weakness like water pouring through a broken dam, like electricity discharging through a faulty wire, like everything he's worked for dissolving into nothing. Because alcohol doesn't just lower your inhibitions. It attacks the very foundations of self-control, the neurological infrastructure that makes discipline possible. It hijacks your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and impulse control, like a virus hijacking a computer's operating system. Your prefrontal cortex is the CEO of your brain, the executive center that makes the hard decisions, that chooses long-term benefits over short-term pleasures, that maintains your vision when everything else is pulling you toward immediate gratification. Alcohol systematically impairs this center, like an assassin targeting the command structure of an army. It floods your system with dopamine, creating artificial pleasure that makes your brain crave more stimulation, more novelty, more immediate gratification. Your reward circuits become confused, mistaking the chemical high for genuine accomplishment, the artificial euphoria for real satisfaction. This dopamine flood is particularly dangerous for men practicing retention because it mimics the neurochemical reward that comes from sexual release. Your brain, drunk on artificial pleasure, begins to crave the real thing. The very neurotransmitter that should motivate you toward achievement becomes hijacked by chemical deception. Your GABA receptors, normally responsible for calm and control, become overstimulated and then depleted, leaving you anxious and impulsive in the hours and days that follow. You feel restless, agitated, unable to find peace and stillness, driven to seek stimulation in old patterns, old habits, old failures. GABA is your brain's natural brake system, the neurotransmitter that allows you to feel calm without external substances, to find peace without chemical assistance. When alcohol floods your GABA receptors, it's like flooding the brakes of a car, temporarily effective, but ultimately damaging to the entire system. Your serotonin levels crash like a stock market in free fall, creating depression and emotional instability that makes you seek comfort in familiar behaviors. The same neurotransmitter that should provide feelings of well-being and contentment becomes depleted, leaving you vulnerable to every impulse, every craving, every weakness you thought you'd overcome. Serotonin is crucial for mood regulation, for the sense of satisfaction that comes from delayed gratification, for the contentment that makes retention possible. When alcohol disrupts your serotonin system, it's like removing the foundation from beneath your emotional stability. Your testosterone production is suppressed by alcohol's toxic effects on your endocrine system. The very hormone that fuels your masculine drive, your ambition, your ability to maintain retention, is diminished by every drink you take. Your liver, overwhelmed with processing the poison you've consumed, cannot effectively metabolize hormones, creating an imbalance that persists long after the alcohol has left your system. Testosterone is not just about sex drive, it's about drive itself. It's the hormone of ambition, of competition, of the will to excel and achieve. When alcohol suppresses testosterone, it's suppressing the very essence of masculine motivation. But it goes deeper than biochemistry. Alcohol attacks the spiritual foundations of retention like termites attacking the wooden frame of a house. When you drink, you're choosing to numb yourself rather than feel the power building within you. You're choosing to escape reality rather than transform it. You're choosing to weaken your connection to your higher self rather than strengthen it. Retention is about becoming more conscious, more aware, more present to the energy flowing through you like a river of liquid fire. It's about developing the sensitivity to feel your life force, to direct it, to use it as the raw material for transformation. Alcohol is about becoming less conscious, less aware, less present. It's about numbing your sensitivity, dulling your awareness, disconnecting you from the very energy you're trying to cultivate. These two states are fundamentally incompatible, like trying to build a fire while pouring water on it, like trying to concentrate light while scattering it, like trying to accumulate power while dissipating it. You cannot walk the path of awakening while simultaneously choosing the path of unconsciousness. You cannot develop spiritual sensitivity while regularly numbing your senses. You cannot build a connection to your higher self while repeatedly choosing substances that pull you into your lower self. Every time you drink, you're voting for the old version of yourself, the version that needed external substances to feel good, to have fun, to connect with others, to handle the challenges of life. The version that couldn't face reality without chemical assistance, that required artificial courage to approach women, that needed liquid confidence to speak his truth. The version that was weak, dependent, controllable, manipulable by any system that could provide the next hit of artificial satisfaction. The version that was a consumer rather than a creator, a victim rather than a victor, a slave rather than a sovereign. This old version of you believed that happiness came from outside, that confidence could be borrowed, that courage could be purchased, that connection required chemical lubricant. This version lived in constant dependency, always needing something external to feel complete. Watch men in bars and clubs, these temples of liquid weakness, these cathedrals of chemical dependence. See how they transform from potentially powerful beings into stumbling children, slurring their words like babies learning to speak, making poor decisions like teenagers without supervision, chasing validation from strangers like beggars chasing coins thrown from carriage windows. Watch how their retention, if they had any, evaporates like morning dew under the harsh sun of intoxication. Their eyes lose focus, becoming glassy and vacant like windows into empty rooms. The sharp, penetrating gaze of a man on retention becomes the unfocused stare of chemical dependency. Their posture deteriorates as their core strength weakens, as the erect bearing of a disciplined man becomes the slouched position of a defeated boy. The proud carriage that comes from retained energy becomes the hunched shoulders of dissipated power. Their speech becomes impaired as their brain function diminishes, as the clear articulation of a man with something to say becomes the mumbled nonsense of a mind under siege. Most tellingly, their decision-making ability crumbles as the alcohol systematically dismantles their higher cognitive functions like a demolition crew destroying a building floor by floor. And in this weakened state, when their defenses are down and their judgment is impaired, when their willpower has been dissolved and their discipline has been shattered, the old patterns reassert themselves with the force of a dam bursting. The porn they've avoided for months suddenly seems appealing, like a siren song calling to a sailor with stopped ears. The urges they've successfully resisted become overwhelming, like waves that were manageable in calm weather becoming tsunamis in the storm of intoxication. The discipline they've built through countless small victories dissolves in the chemical soup of intoxication like salt dissolving in water. This is why the most dangerous night for your retention is often a night of drinking. Not because you become more sexual, but because you become less disciplined. Not because alcohol increases desire, but because it decreases resistance. The substance doesn't make you want release more. It makes you less capable of saying no to that want. It's like removing the safety from a loaded weapon. The weapon doesn't become more dangerous by itself, but your ability to handle it safely becomes compromised. Your retention doesn't become harder to maintain because alcohol makes it more difficult. It becomes harder to maintain because alcohol makes you less capable of difficulty. The morning after is always the same. You wake with a pounding head and a broken streak, like a general waking to find his army defeated, his strategy in ruins, his victory turned to ash. The energy you've spent weeks building is gone, spilled out in a moment of weakness like blood from an open vein. The progress you've made toward becoming your highest self has been erased by a night of choosing your lowest self. The man you were becoming, the powerful being you were growing into, has been replaced by the familiar stranger in the mirror, the one who looks like you but feels like a shadow of your potential. And the shame is worse because you know it was preventable. You know that if you had remained clear, if you had kept your wits about you, if you had honored the discipline you've been building like a sacred fire, you would still be on your path. Instead, you're back at the beginning, starting over, rebuilding what should never have been torn down. The worst part is the clarity that comes the next day, when the alcohol has cleared from your system, and you can see with devastating precision exactly what you've lost. The fog lifts and reveals the devastation, like morning mist clearing to show a battlefield littered with casualties. But they want you to think this is normal. They want you to believe that drinking is part of being a man, that socializing requires alcohol, that relaxation demands intoxication, that celebration necessitates chemicals. They've created a culture where choosing not to drink is seen as strange, where sobriety is viewed with suspicion, where clear thinking is considered antisocial. They've made alcohol the default, the assumption, the expected choice in nearly every social situation. They've normalized a substance that systematically undermines masculine development, that attacks the very foundations of self-control, that creates the perfect conditions for relapse and failure. Look at their marketing messages, these carefully crafted psychological weapons designed to penetrate your defenses and reshape your beliefs. They don't sell alcohol, they sell an identity. They sell the idea that real men drink beer, that successful people toast with wine, that confident individuals hold cocktails like shields against social anxiety. They associate their poison with everything you want to become while ensuring that consuming their poison makes becoming those things impossible. It's the perfect trap. They sell you the image of strength while delivering weakness, promise confidence while providing anxiety, offer social connection while creating isolation. The beer commercials show strong, successful men bonding over bottles, laughing and connecting in ways that seem authentic and appealing. But they don't show you the same men 3 hours later, stumbling home with shattered self-control and broken retention, their masculine energy dissipated, their retention destroyed. They show you the moment of artificial connection, but hide the hours of real disconnection that follow. They advertise the peak of chemical euphoria, but conceal the valley of natural depression that comes after. The whiskey ads feature powerful executives making deals over drinks, men who appear to be masters of their domain, kings of their industry. But they don't show you how those same executives struggle with decision-making and impulse control after years of regular consumption, how their judgment becomes compromised, how their leadership becomes undermined by their dependents. They show you the image of power but hide the reality of dependency. They sell you the fantasy of control while delivering the reality of compulsion. The wine industry sells sophistication and culture, refinement and taste, the idea that appreciation of alcohol is a mark of education and class. But they don't mention how alcohol systematically destroys the very mental faculties that create true sophistication and culture, how it degrades the cognitive abilities that make genuine refinement possible. They sell you the appearance of sophistication while destroying your capacity for genuine refinement. They offer you the symbols of culture while eroding your ability to create culture. They sell you the image of what you want to be while poisoning your ability to become it. They offer you the appearance of power while systematically draining your actual power. They promise you masculine energy while delivering feminine dependence. This is the great deception of alcohol marketing, the masterpiece of manipulation that has captured entire generations of men. They promise you strength while delivering weakness. They offer you confidence while providing anxiety. They sell you social connection while creating isolation. They advertise masculine power while undermining the very foundations of masculine development. And most insidiously, they make sobriety seem boring, antisocial, extreme, judgmental, self-righteous. They've created a world where the abnormal choice is choosing not to poison yourself regularly, where the radical act is maintaining clarity and control, where the rebellious stance is refusing to participate in your own systematic weakening. They've convinced you that the man who doesn't drink is missing out, that he's depriving himself of pleasure, that he's being unnecessarily rigid or morally superior. They've made temperance seem like a character flaw, discipline seem like deprivation, and self-control seem like self-punishment. They've created a culture where asking for water instead of alcohol requires explanation, where refusing a drink demands justification, where choosing clarity over intoxication is seen as an affront to social norms. But the ancients knew better. In every tradition that understood the power of retained energy, alcohol was seen as an obstacle to spiritual development, a barrier to higher consciousness, a poison that prevented men from accessing their true potential. The yogis called it tamasic, meaning it increased darkness and ignorance, that it pulled consciousness downward rather than lifting it upward. In the yogic understanding, there are 3 qualities of nature: sattva, clarity and harmony; rajas, passion and activity; and tamas, darkness and inertia. Alcohol was seen as purely tamasic, increasing confusion and lethargy while destroying clarity and wisdom. The Buddhist monks avoided it as one of the fundamental precepts, understanding that intoxication was incompatible with the clarity necessary for enlightenment. The Buddha specifically included abstinence from intoxicants as one of the 5 basic precepts for all practitioners, not as a moral rule, but as a practical necessity for spiritual development. The Sufi mystics understood that intoxication of the bottle prevented intoxication of the spirit, that chemical ecstasy blocked the path to divine ecstasy, that artificial transcendence was the enemy of genuine transcendence. They spoke of being drunk on divine love, but this required complete sobriety from earthly substances. They knew what modern science has confirmed: alcohol is neurotoxic. It literally kills brain cells, particularly in the areas responsible for decision-making and impulse control. It disrupts sleep patterns, preventing the deep rest necessary for retention and recovery. It depletes nutrients essential for hormone production and nervous system health. Research has shown that even moderate alcohol consumption causes brain shrinkage, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, the exact area you need functioning optimally for retention. The more alcohol consumed, the more significant the damage, but even small amounts cause measurable harm. But beyond the physical effects, they understood the spiritual implications, the ways that alcohol corrupted the very foundations of masculine development. Alcohol creates a false sense of well-being that prevents you from doing the real work of building genuine confidence. It offers artificial relaxation that keeps you from developing true inner peace. It provides synthetic social ease that prevents you from building authentic communication skills. It delivers chemical courage that stops you from developing real bravery. It supplies liquid confidence that prevents you from accessing your natural charisma. When you drink to feel good, you're teaching yourself that feeling good requires external substances. When you drink to relax, you're teaching yourself that relaxation is impossible without chemical assistance. When you drink to socialize, you're teaching yourself that genuine connection requires artificial lubricant. When you drink to celebrate, you're teaching yourself that joy needs chemical enhancement. When you drink to forget, you're teaching yourself that problems can be dissolved rather than solved. When you drink to feel confident, you're teaching yourself that your natural state is inadequate. These lessons compound over time, creating a deep dependency not just on alcohol, but on external sources of comfort, confidence, and connection. You lose faith in your natural ability to generate these states from within. You forget that your retained energy is the ultimate source of authentic power, genuine confidence, and real magnetism. The man who retains while drinking is like a man trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much discipline he applies to retention, the alcohol systematically undermines his efforts. The energy he builds during sober hours is dissipated during drinking hours. The willpower he strengthens through resistance is weakened through intoxication. This is why so many men struggle with retention despite their best efforts, despite their sincere desire to change, despite their genuine commitment to growth. They focus on the symptom while ignoring the cause. They try to build discipline while simultaneously consuming a substance designed to destroy discipline. They attempt to develop self-control while regularly poisoning the very brain centers responsible for self-control. They work to accumulate energy while systematically creating conditions for that energy to dissipate. The solution is not moderation. The solution is elimination. You cannot moderately consume a substance that fundamentally opposes your goals. You cannot casually use a tool designed to undermine your efforts. You cannot occasionally drink the poison that destroys your progress and expect to maintain that progress. Moderation is a myth sold by an industry that needs you consuming their product regularly, but not so obviously that you recognize the problem. They want you drinking enough to maintain dependency, but not so much that you see the connection between your consumption and your failures. They teach you to blame your relapses on weakness rather than poison. They convince you that your broken streaks are evidence of insufficient willpower rather than chemical sabotage. They make you think the problem is internal when the solution is environmental. They've created the perfect system. They sell you the poison that causes your problems, then convince you that the problems are your fault, then sell you more poison to help you forget about the problems they created. But when you eliminate alcohol completely, when you choose to live with perpetual clarity, when you refuse to voluntarily impair your judgment and weaken your resolve, your retention becomes unshakable. The urges that once seemed overwhelming become manageable. The discipline that once felt fragile becomes robust. Your sleep improves dramatically, allowing your nervous system to recover and strengthen without chemical interference. Deep sleep is crucial for retention because it's when your brain consolidates memories, including the memories of discipline and self-control. Alcohol disrupts this process, making it harder to learn from your experiences and build lasting habits. Your hormones balance naturally, supporting your retention efforts rather than undermining them. Testosterone production increases when alcohol is removed from your system. Growth hormone, crucial for recovery and muscle building, is no longer suppressed by regular intoxication. Your decision-making sharpens like a blade being honed, making it easier to choose long-term benefits over short-term pleasures. The prefrontal cortex, no longer under regular assault from alcohol, begins to function optimally, giving you access to your highest cognitive abilities. Your anxiety decreases as your nervous system learns to regulate itself without artificial assistance, reducing your need for escapist behaviors. The constant low-level anxiety that comes from regular alcohol consumption, often mistaken for normal stress, begins to fade. Your confidence grows from genuine sources rather than chemical ones, becoming solid and unshakable rather than borrowed and temporary. This authentic confidence is magnetic in a way that liquid courage never could be. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself changes fundamentally. You stop being a man who needs external substances to function and become a man who generates his own strength from within. You stop being someone who occasionally poisons himself and become someone who consistently nourishes himself. You stop being a victim of marketing and become a master of your own choices. You stop being dependent on others for your emotional state and become sovereign over your own consciousness. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Your brain, accustomed to regular chemical interference, must relearn how to generate natural pleasure, natural relaxation, natural social ease. Your nervous system, used to the artificial ups and downs of alcohol, must recalibrate to your natural rhythms. The first social events without alcohol may feel uncomfortable, like wearing new shoes that haven't been broken in yet. Your anxiety, no longer numbed by drinking, may feel more intense, more present, more demanding of your attention. Your social interactions, no longer lubricated by liquid courage, may feel more awkward, more uncertain, more challenging. This is not evidence that you need alcohol. This is evidence that alcohol has been preventing you from developing natural coping mechanisms, authentic social skills, genuine confidence. This discomfort is not a problem to be solved by returning to poison. It's a challenge to be overcome by developing strength. Push through this discomfort like a warrior pushing through enemy lines. Lean into the awkwardness like a student leaning into a difficult lesson. Learn to generate confidence from your retained energy rather than borrowed courage from a bottle. Discover that real social connection happens when both parties are present and authentic, not when both are chemically altered and performing. Watch what happens to your retention when alcohol is completely removed from your life, like a tumor being surgically removed from healthy tissue. The streaks that once seemed impossible to maintain become effortless. The discipline that once felt like constant struggle becomes natural. The energy that once dissipated regularly begins to accumulate consistently. Your presence changes in ways that others notice immediately. People comment that something is different about you, though they can't articulate what it is. You radiate a clarity and strength that others find magnetic. Women sense your authentic confidence rather than the artificial bravado of liquid courage. Men respect your self-control rather than your ability to consume poison. Children feel safe around you because you're present and stable. Animals are drawn to you because they sense your calm energy. You become part of a rare breed. Men who live with perpetual clarity, who make decisions from wisdom rather than impairment, who build their lives on the solid foundation of disciplined energy rather than the shifting sands of chemical dependence. This is not about becoming a teetotaler for moral reasons or religious convictions. This is about recognizing alcohol as the tactical mistake it is, the strategic error that undermines everything you're trying to build. Every great military strategist knows you don't give your enemy tools to defeat you. Every successful businessman knows you don't undermine your own efforts. Every wise man knows you don't poison the vessel you're trying to fill. Alcohol is incompatible with retention, not because of arbitrary rules, but because of fundamental physics. You cannot simultaneously build and destroy, accumulate and dissipate, strengthen and weaken. The universe doesn't bend to accommodate your desire to have contradictory goals. Reality doesn't adjust to your wishful thinking. The path is clear, though not easy. You can have alcohol, or you can have retention. You can have temporary chemical pleasure, or you can have permanent spiritual power. You can have the momentary escape of intoxication, or you can have the lasting strength of accumulated energy. But you cannot have both. Choose retention. Choose clarity. Choose the long-term power over the short-term pleasure. Choose to be the man who generates his own strength rather than the man who regularly weakens himself. Choose to walk the path of consciousness rather than unconsciousness, of discipline rather than indulgence, of authentic power rather than borrowed courage. Your future self, the man you're becoming through retention, is watching every choice you make. He's counting on you to make the decisions that will bring him into existence. Will you choose the poison that breaks your streak, or will you choose the clarity that builds your power? Will you trade your accumulating energy for temporary intoxication, or will you guard your fire with the dedication of a warrior protecting his most precious weapon? Will you be another casualty of the alcohol industry's war on masculine consciousness, or will you be a survivor who refuses to be conquered? The alcohol industry has had its hooks in you long enough. The marketing has deceived you long enough. The culture has led you astray long enough. It's time to reclaim your sovereignty, to reject the poison, to choose the path of the awakened masculine. Your retention depends on it. Your future depends on it. The man you're becoming demands it. Rise above the poison. Rise into your power. Rise.